Okay, everybody should know you're being recorded, and turn it over to Ken.
Okay, Patsy, so my screen is shared and you can see the first slide. Is that correct? Anybody, if anybody could answer me, can you
Yes,
see the first
Ken.
slide, everything? Okay.
Yes.
All righty. So again, Patsy, I think Patsy thanks and appreciate the opportunity from Bear Audubon to talk tonight. Again, up on the screen is the cover photo for the book. Got a Harris's hawk, which we'll return to shortly. Hopefully, everybody enjoys the discussion on the photography and the images, but the real value of the book is in the poetry. And so I just highlight early where you can obtain the book first at the publisher, FlowerSong Press, or on Amazon.com. And if you use Amazon.com, you could use the smile function and contribute to Bear Audubon at the same time. So you get double value for it. So taking a bit of a detour to discuss the equipment and the photographic process. So hopefully answer a lot of those questions up front. The key part of the equipment is a Nikon 2 to 500 millimeter zoom. It's the biggest gun, biggest telephoto I could find and handhold and carry for several hours. And it's got a maximum aperture of 5.6. That's the most light it'll let in. And so that becomes very important. I'll show some examples of what it does with the photos here shortly. The camera body I use is a Nikon D5, although some of the photos would be with an older D7100. I found the D5 to be very rugged. It's very fast. It's got a very large image sensor, and it works well with the lens in terms of a quick auto focusing. The entire weight for all this is about 8.5 pounds. So again, it's something I can handhold, don't have to use a tripod, and I can carry around bird surveys, up and down canyons, getting into some pretty gnarly areas. And because of that, I routinely use, as you see on the front end of the camera, routinely use a lens hood. Not so much for reducing side glare, which is the purpose. It does that well, but it's to protect the front end of the camera. I've fallen with this. I've come down the side of a canyon when I didn't really want to. I've broken 2 lens hoods. I'm on my 3rd one now, but the front end of the camera is still in pristine shape, so it continues to function well. Now, basic camera settings with that gear. I use a manual exposure mode. That is, I control both the shutter speed and the aperture. The base settings, I kind of use a base value and then work off of that as we're out photographing. I use a wide open aperture, 5.6, which is the most light that lens will let in, and then a shutter speed at 1,000th of a second. At that shutter speed, I rarely raise it any higher, but that shutter speed allows me to compensate for any lens movement, any vibration at any focal length. And it also does a pretty good job of freezing the wing motions of any flying bird. I'll lower that shutter speed if I've got a low light situation and the subject's fairly stationary. I'll routinely will manually overexpose in backlit situations. That is where the subject, the bird, for example, is dark, and try to lighten it up, or underexpose when I've got bright light situations that are washing out the color. I'm frequently using underexposure in order to try to get richer colors throughout a bird walk. Now, let me come back to just talk about the aperture at 5.6. Again, it's the maximum aperture letting in the most light with the lens. And so here's an example of what that does. It gives me a very narrow depth of field. By that, I mean it's the depth window from near to far that the subject is in focus. And at the widest aperture, the most light being let in, that depth of field is fairly narrow. And so the background in particular, as you see with this example photo, is heavily blurred, excuse me. And so this example, blue-gray gnatcatcher, is within the focus window, comes out very sharp, and against the blurred background, the bird really stands out. So it creates an effect that I think is very valuable and useful with wildlife photography. And so here's another example where I've got a little more foliage around the bird. In this case is a northern parula. So you see kind of in the right foreground is blurry, the leaves are blurry, and again the deep background is heavily blurred. Now this it can take a lot of concentration and work in order to keep the bird or the subject within that narrow depth of field. Often what I get are some great photos of a twig or the leaf and a blurry bird. And so as the bird is working around, in and out, popping in and out of leaves, in and out of foliage, you've got to work at getting the bird to pop out, get a good look at it, and get it within that depth of field focus. So sometimes it takes a little bit of luck, but when you get that good pop on a bird and when it's crisply in focus, it's a very great result. Now, this particular camera setup is also good for nearby items. I tend to be heavily distracted during bird walks, during bird surveys, and so dragonflies, butterflies, any other bug that comes by, I also tend to want to get a photograph of that as well. The minimum focus distance for this camera setup is just a little over 7 feet. And so this is a photograph of a dragonfly, Halloween pennant dragonfly. And you see that it's just within the depth of field. The lower part of the wings, the foreground are blurry. And then the back part of the wings, the background is blurry as well. And of course, the deep background is heavily blurred. But you see this, my depth of field is only about 1.5 inches wide. So the abdomen and the head of the butterfly are in good focus, but the wings tend to be a bit blurry on both sides. Now, same dragonfly, but I have cranked up the depth of field to an f/18. And so you see the dragonfly now is fairly crisp and in focus all across the wings, abdomen, head, etc. But also you look at the deep background has now got a more discernible pattern to it. I think it's a little more distracting. So you can compare the 5.6 versus the 18. The f/18 is arguably a more technically accurate and valuable photograph of the dragonfly, but the more pleasing photo may be the one on the left with the very heavily blurred background. So coming back to the cover photo, this is a Harris's hawk. You'll see on each one of the photos, I'll label the common name, but also the location of where the photo was taken. All the birds are Texas birds that we're showing this evening. The Harris's hawk is year-round, is present year-round in the valley and along the Texas-Mexico border, but you do see we do see occasional sightings of Harris's hawks all the way up into Bexar County and further north. If you get on the roads, say travel a highway down into Harlingen or travel to Del Rio, as you get closer to those cities, you will more and more increasing frequency, you'll see a Harris's hawk up on a fence post, up on a power pole. And as you get down into the valley or get down near the border, they generally tend to be fairly sociable animals, fairly tolerant of human presence. So you can walk up and get good views or get to interact with a Harris's hawk often. They are themselves fairly sociable animals. They'll cooperate with each other in groups of 3 or more in terms of hunting prey. Also, their family units tend to remain intact for an extended period of time. And so recently, young birds, immature birds, can tend to help the parents out with new broods. And so all that social interaction and cooperation is fairly unique for raptors. And so here's a photo. You've got two adults who are in intense conversation with one another. I tend to think that they're talking about Junior, is the bird on the left with the striped breast, is an immature Harris's hawk. So this could very well be one of these extended or family units that stay together for a period of time. The name for the Harris's hawk, John James Audubon, gave the common name to the Harris's hawk, and it's after Edward Harris, who was a New Jersey native in the early 1800s. He was a big financial supporter of Audubon and also accompanied him on a couple of his trips. And so with that financial support, his name is now in perpetuity with the Harris's hawk. Also, a little later, we'll see the Harris's sparrow, which is also named after Edward Harris. So moving on to the first photo, this is the first bird that's associated with one of Lucy's poems in the book, is the Carolina wren. And it's a year-round resident, very prevalent here in our area. Very difficult to go out on a bird walk where you don't, certainly if you don't hear, you almost always hear a Carolina wren out on a bird survey. And frequently the chance you'll get to see one. You got the rich rufous brown colors on the bird with the bold white eyebrows. So it's a very striking, attractive bird. Everybody is probably had some experience with it building a nest just about anywhere around your house, including the flower pot that's hanging on your front porch. I want to read a quote from, again, going back to John James Audubon. He believed that the Carolina wren behaved like a mouse, said it appears and is out of sight in a moment, peeps into a crevice, passes rapidly through the crevice, and then shows itself at a different place in the next instance. So they can be fun to watch. They're a great joy out on a bird survey, but boy, they can be really hard to get a photo of because they just don't stay still. Now, here's something else that the Carolina wren does well, which is make noise. It's got a wide range of calls and songs, and provides that variety out on just about any bird walk. Now, to quote, I've quoted Audubon here a couple of times, so to quote another pair of very famous birders, that's Patsy and Tom Inglet, you learn bird calls and bird songs one bird at a time. The Carolina wren gets my vote for being a bird to concentrate on early if you're into the dark art of learning bird calls. You get to hear them year round. They've got, a wide range of calls and songs. And so you learn to be able to depend on tonality and the style of the song in order to be able to recognize the bird. So a great bird for our area. Now, another wren tied in with a separate poem of Lucy's in the book is the canyon wren. A little smaller than the Carolina wren. It's a beautiful dark brown, but with this very bright characteristic that's characteristic of the wren in terms of bright white upper chest and throat, and so very recognizable in the field. It's uncommon in my experience. It's uncommon in and around the San Antonio area, but as you climb the Balcones Fault and get into the counties north of Bexar County, say into Kendall County, Kerr County, Bandera County, you get it more and more. Get it more and more often in terms of both its presence and hearing its call. It's a year-round resident of that area. It's a very aggressive and active bug hunter. I think I've got more photos of a canyon wren with a bug in its mouth than any other bird. It can scale vertical walls, in and out of boulders and rocks. And with that sharp, long beak, it is a very efficient bug hunter. They're very frequently on our back porch. In fact, there were some out there, some out this morning. And with that sharp, long beak, they can go after the small bugs, spiders, ants. You ought to see when you get a line of ants, canyon wren can just go nuts. They have a very iconic, interesting call. I really enjoy it. It's just a descending series of notes, sound with ending with a couple of raspberries. And if you get them in an area where you've got a bit of echo, like for example, like a back porch, they can, for a small bird, they can really make a lot of noise. Now, moving on to a little bit of synchronized flying, we look at a photo of a cedar waxwing. Now, this is in a poem in the book that Lucy has titled Wingbeat Atlas. This is the title of the poem from which the book also gets its name. And the cedar waxwing has its number of species are tied up in the poem. The cedar waxwing line is talking about wild twists that tame the air, which really ties in with this photo. The cedar waxwings are just strikingly beautiful birds, a smooth golden brown color with the Zorro mask on the face. And when they're sitting on a tree, they're almost like porcelain. They've got the bright yellow on the tail. And then occasionally when you can see it on the right-hand bird in the photo, you see the red tips on the secondary feathers that look like they've been dipped in wax, which gives the name waxwing to the bird. They are winter residents. They're not here right now, but hopefully we'll start to see them by start coming in mid to late November. Anecdotally, last winter season, the number of cedar waxwings appeared to be suppressed, at least from my standpoint. I didn't enjoy the numbers, seeing them as had done in prior winters. So hopefully I got my fingers crossed that the numbers increase. We'll get a normal contingent of these birds because they're just very, very gorgeous and entertaining presence in our lives. Now, this particular photo was taken in downtown Boerne at a little nature store. There's a water feature out in the store, and we had a flock of cedar waxwings that were going down in the water feature, going up to a tree, coming down to the water feature, going up to a tree. And this photo gives you the background. Here they are around the water, and you see some birds up in the air as they come down, either leaving or coming down from the tree to the water. So it was great entertainment. And during the movement of the birds, was able to get this photo just above the water feature. I don't know if they were coming up or coming down, but fortunately they came out in the pattern where it looks like they were synchronously flying across the field of view. Now, another temporary resident in the area, which is here now, it's an over summer resident for us, is the blue grosbeak. The purplish blue color, this is a male, purplish blue color of the male along with the rufous wing bars make this a very striking bird in the field. And the males will keep singing. They tend to come up and are very proud out on the edge of the tree. They've got a very beautiful song, can be heard at quite a distance. And they tend to sing well into their breeding season throughout the summer. So they become great entertainers for us out on bird walks. We were able to get a great look yesterday at both a male and a female grosbeak in northern Kendall County on a bird survey. The poem that's associated with the blue grosbeak and that Lucy has written is King of the Blues is the title. And it's got song quotes from B.B. King throughout the poem. It's a great read, quite a fun read. And again, another one I heartily recommend you get the opportunity to get the book for, but also it's even better to get the opportunity, hopefully, to hear Lucy read it. Now, in addition to the males, which are quite, again, quite striking, quite visible, and one of the highlights, they can really relieve the summer doldrums on a bird walk, is to be on the lookout for a female, or in some cases, an immature male. Silhouette's the same. You've still got the large beak, and in this case, a little lighter color, but the rufous wing bars. But it's got this beautiful brown, reddish brown color that is almost as gorgeous in its own right, although they can be a little harder to find, a little harder to identify in the field. But worth looking out for, and they add to the value just as much as the males do out on a bird survey. Now, when we're out walking, we've got our eyes down on the ground. It's always worth looking up in order to check out what's up above us, and or what might be looking back at you. More often than not, you'll get a chance to see turkey vultures up in the sky. Turkey vultures, we get to enjoy them year round, although they tend to be a bit more scarce in winter. They have, I think, a very attractive, buoyant flight in terms of they get buffeted and rocked around in the wind, and they tend to fly with this rocking motion and a slight dihedral. And to me, it's kind of like flying while drunk. They're just continually rocking as they as they move around. They're great in terms of being able to glide and soar for long distances without being able to flap a wing. So I find our turkey vultures to be very entertaining. Now, with their close cousins, the black vultures, they provide a huge public service in keeping our roadways clean of dead animals and roadkill. And as our deer population continues to increase, the service continues to be more and more valuable. Now, when you're looking up and examining a kettle of vultures, particularly turkey vultures, it's always, I always enjoy just taking a close look to make sure that they're all turkey vultures, because sometimes you can get a surprise lurking in with them. One of those could be a zone-tailed hawk. Superficially, the zone-tail looks similar to a turkey vulture with a two-tone appearance and the white-gray along the back end of the wings and dark in front. And they tend to fly with the same rocking motion. Now, there's one school of thought that the zone tail has come to mimic the behavior of turkey vultures and to fly with turkey vultures in order to sneak up on its prey. There's live prey that the zone-tailed hawks like, little rodents, lizards, etc., that become relaxed in the presence of turkey vultures, because as carrion eaters, eaters of dead animals, the live prey, live animals are just not that, they tend to be relaxed around turkey vultures, and a zone-tailed hawk can come in, sneak in, and the prey becomes a midday lunch. The guidebooks tend to show the range for zone-tailed hawks to be fairly limited within West Texas, to be a summer visitor. However, from eBird data and my own anecdotal viewing of zone-tail is that you can find observations throughout a long part of the year, as well as the range covering a lot of central Texas and apparently expanding. So hopefully zone-tailed hawks are going to be ones that we can see more throughout the year and over an expanding area. Now, this is an additional photo. The one on the right is in the book. This is an extra one that comes from Honey Creek State Natural Area, which is right next to Guadalupe River State Park in Comal County. Right there on Honey Creek, there's been a zone-tailed hawk nest that's been established for several years now. And we return, and the hawks return each year and raise at least one, get one clutch each year as well. This is a location that's outside. It's further east than most distributions listed in guidebooks. So it's just another example of what's hopefully the expanding range for this bird. And I want to give a shout out to Craig Hensley for starting the surveys there in Honey Creek State Natural Area. It's a real privilege to go out on a monthly basis and be able to participate in those surveys. Now, going along and still looking up in the area, still looking up in the air, here is a photo of two common ravens. Again, year-round residents here in the area. Usually we see them in pairs, and you're going to hear them quite often well before you see them. They've got this harsh, raucous call that's very iconic. And but you see them, and then you often, you hear it, and then you often get to see them just immediately after that. Now, I'm about as poetic as a tree stump, but you're going to get to suffer through me reading the poem that Lucy wrote that's associated with this photo, with the common ravens. Ravens don't fly; they roll across the sky. Mirrored obsidian, wet with sun. I think that's just, I vision that and apply it against this photo, and it's hard for me now not to see some ravens and have this poem kind of flash through my brain. So Lucy was able to accomplish almost the impossible, is to get to me to remember a poem, which is a first in my life. And this has nothing to do with the book. It's just an extra photo that I wanted to flash up there. You see a common raven flying as wingman to a red-tailed hawk. Now, still staying with the theme of birds in the air, although this one's a little closer to the ground, is the northern harrier. It's a uncommon winter visitor to our area, but just a gorgeous bird to get a sighting of and to watch when you get the opportunity. It's got the iconic white rump patch, which is a key identifying feature in all plumages and for all ages in both sexes. And if you ever get the opportunity to see a northern harrier work a field, they tend to fly low over fields, marsh areas, and it's almost a casual, slow flight as they look for their prey. But when they find something they're interested in, it's just in a flash. It's an instant. They will turn, twist, and dive. And the photo on the right, lower right-hand corner, it's a poor one at a long distance, but you get that sense of motion as they go down after a small rodent or a lizard. And judging from the times I've seen them come up with something, they're pretty proficient hunters. And so they'll take that off, they'll finish off lunch, and then they'll come back out to the field again. So if you get, you see a northern harrier, is to try to exercise the patience or take the time to see if it's hunting, and give yourself a little extra time to see how it performs and what it's doing. Quite an entertaining treat. Now we'll come back down to the ground and look at, in this case, a year-round sparrow of the desert country and down into the valley, although we'll get occasional sightings here into Bexar County. The closest place that I'm aware of to see them routinely is in South Llano State Park, South Llano River State Park near Junction. is a good spot. This particular photo was taken in Big Bend National Park in Brewster County. Now, these are just elegant birds, just black and white plumage. To me, it's hard to imagine how you could take the colors of black and white, shades of black and white, and make a more striking and elegant bird. In addition, they're not shy birds. These are not skulking sparrows. They come out, they like to show off. And so they're a great bird, a great sparrow for birders in terms of both being able to recognize them easily and get the opportunity to see them cleanly. Now, we'll look at some additional sparrows that are in our area. They're overwintering residents. This first one is the Harris's sparrow, taken on a brush pile in northern Kendall County. Now, the Harris's sparrow, very striking with the black head, the tight pink bill, and the white, clean white underneath. These were birds that we could count on seeing in, this is James Keel Park in northern Kendall County. Could count on seeing them every winter, was in terms of they would come within their southerly migration path. However, I haven't seen them the past couple of years. It was 2019, early 2019, that winter's the last time I've got a recorded sighting. I have a sighting within James Keel Park. Haven't seen them since. And so I'm just concerned that their extent of migration, southerly extent of their migration, is starting to shorten up a bit. So I got my fingers crossed it's this next winter that we'll be able to enjoy their company. Another overwintering sparrow, and yet we're on the same brush pile, is white crowned sparrow. It's one that
Little bear.
hello, is a white crowned sparrow, and it's got a you see the bicycle helmet, the black and white pattern bicycle helmet on the head, which makes them the adults easily identified in the field. Now, overwintering in pretty large numbers as well, we get immature first year white crowned sparrows, which they have the same striped head pattern, but just in browns and beiges. Now, sometimes it can be an interesting ID discussion. I have learned this bird several times, and I've tried to make some rather exotic species out of it. So it adds a little bit of spice to a bird walk when you've got the immatures in there as well in terms of the ID process. Now, in the book, the poem that Lucy has associated with the two sparrow photos is not about the birds directly, but it's about the brush pile. It's titled Ode to a Brush Pile, and it's just a great read. It's an elegant, poetic summary that's naturalist accurate, that describes how essential and how critical a habitat a brush pile can be for birds. In my opinion, it ought to be required reading for all residents and for all landowners, required reading for all landowners, and particularly people who are just moving out here for the first time. Now, I know when I first retired, I'd see a brush pile like this one, and I would think I'd immediately go to want to clean it up or at least make a bonfire out of it. Now I'm just like a reformed smoker. I've come 180 degrees, and I think there's no better addition to your landscape than a nice brush pile. They are, along, as we'll talk a little later, with having a diversity of native plants. Things like these brush piles are just so essential and so critical to maintain our habitat diversity and attracting and maintaining our birds. Another overwintering bird, very striking, very beautiful, is the spotted towhee with the black head, those bright, striking red eyes, and the rufous flanks. It's a very unmistakably ID bird when you can get it out in the open. And during winter is a really special one to be able to see out on a bird survey, to see out on a bird walk. Now, it's interesting, when they're out in the open, they just really pop out at you, very striking, unmistakable ID. But for a bird that just stands out so much out in the open, and here's one where you can start to get that feel, they start to get in a bit of foliage, and they can camouflage very quickly and be hard to find. Now, fortunately, when they're here in winter, they've got a unique call that's just this shrill squawk that's very iconic to the spotted towhee, and they're fairly constantly calling. So you get to hear them, you know they're there, and with a little patience, because they're moving around frequently, with a little patience, you're going to get one to pop out and to get a good look at it. So a wonderful bird for the area. And Lucy's poem has got a spotted towhee as teacher, and you can just see the photo that's in the book, the one on the left, is its eyes stare you down, just how the teacher is able to have a commanding presence, and you're going to be listening to it. Another very striking bird, one that's just unmistakable, the male vermilion flycatcher. It's like imitating a neon light bulb with a black mask and a black back. I never get tired of seeing the male vermilion in the field, and there's just something magical about having one pop out when you're out on a bird walk. A lot of guidebooks have them as here over summer and with a fairly limited range, although anecdotally I've have been seeing them year round in Bernie City Lake Park and at Joshua Springs Park. And also their presence appears to be getting larger as well throughout Central Texas. So hopefully this is one bird where both the presence over time and the presence from a physical distribution standpoint is one we're going to be able to enjoy more and more. Now the female, if you're out on a bird survey, the female vermilion is also a very striking bird. It's not doesn't pop out as much as the male does, but you've got the salmon pink flanks rather, striped breast, and the mask as well. So they make for an interesting ID definition when you're out in the field. And if you add in the immature male, which has a plumage which is intermediate to, it'll start out looking like the female and end up looking like the male. So at points in between, you can get a really wild looking bird. So you mix all these from the male vermilion, which is unmistakable and really stands out, into the female and the immatures. You can have quite an ID range, and it's sometimes an interesting challenge in the field. We had yesterday on a bird survey, we had a female vermilion that we saw just briefly at a distance and had a debate over whether it could have been what would have been a rare sage phoebe at the time, but got some better looks, and it was clearly a female vermilion. So it adds a little spice out to the bird walks and can give some nice ID challenges. Now back up, looking up and dealing with a raptor. Look at the osprey. It's a deceptively large bird with about a 5-foot wingspan. And to me, the field marks that really stand out for me are the white head, all white head with the black eye mark that comes across the head, make the osprey relatively identifiable. It tends to be a overwinter resident for us, although again, we're seeing sightings that can extend throughout a lot of the year, but generally here in winter. You'll see them around just about any body of water. I've seen them flying over little, very small water traps, water features out on the local golf course. From the standpoint within Kendall County during the winter, you can routinely see them out at Bernie City Lake, for example. They have a steady diet of fish, very unique for raptors in terms of just concentrating on fish. They have a hunting process of gliding and looking over water when they'll suddenly dive and literally just yank a fish out of the water at the end of a successful hunting trip. And so here's both of these photos are in the book. This is the same bird. This is over at Joshua Springs Park, where here it's hunting on the left, and it's got successful fish grab on the right. Another interesting thing, and it's I'd say they're generally fairly proficient hunters, judging by the number of photos I've got with osprey carrying a fish. And every one of the photos, they have the fish in the same posture, where it's got it head up in the direction of flight. Assume the fish is still alive for a short period of time. It'll go to a perch, it finishes its lunch, and then it's back out hunting again. Lucy's got a very great read, a very nice poem, interesting, again, naturalist accurate poem with them that's about the hunting process up to the point of the dive. A fun read. Great blue heron. Now this is a large bird, over a 6-foot wingspan. Some guidebooks will describe it as having a lumbering flight. I think it's a very elegant flight. It's a very majestic bird. They forage in and around bodies of water, marshes, ponds, lakes, generally by themselves. They tend to be loners during the hunting process, quite deliberate in their movements. They move very slowly, if they're moving at all. You can see great blue herons that can just stand stock still for extended periods of time and just let the prey swim underneath them. If they get a frog or a fish, and they'll swallow it whole, and that's also quite entertaining to watch as they manage to get the prey down its neck. Now, even though they are loners in terms of their hunting or foraging process, they're colony nesters. They'll have a number of birds they'll bring their nest together into a single tree. Here's some little side photos of great blue heron nests with heron fledglings. The nests tend to be large pancake affairs. They look like just random twigs put together, although the nest building process can be quite elaborate. I've had the privilege of being part of monitoring teams that have monitored the great blue heron rookery that's on Cibolo Preserve in Kendall County. And they've got the monitoring teams out there, watch all the way from the point of nest building or nest reconstruction, because they come back and they occupy the rookery tree again year after year, through the point of incubating eggs, seeing fledglings like in this photo, early fledglings, up to the point of nestlings. These are nestlings up to the point of becoming fledglings, and then large enough to leave the nest. So it's just a fascinating educational process of being able to watch a brood come together, and you get a newly minted set of herons take off into the wild. Again, this is a year-round bird for us, the great blue heron, and one for us very fortunate to be to have in our presence. Now, just as a side note, the rookery tree is also occupied. In this case, we'll have great egrets will build nests and have broods within the same tree, although they come in a little later, and they tend to take second fiddle in terms of the locations. The great blue herons clearly rule the roost, no pun intended, and the egrets kind of take second fiddle, but it's also fun to be able to watch that cycle. It's like you get a second chapter in the book to watch that cycle of the great egrets come up to the point of nestling, fledglings, and a successful brood. Now, going from a bird with a 6-foot wingspan, we'll come to one that's just a bit smaller. Is a black-chinned hummingbird. This is a male black-chinned. You can identify it with the ring of iridescent purple at the lower edge of the throat. They're present right now in great numbers. I've had seen as many as 18 to 20 around the feeders that we've got out on our front porch. It's really fascinating, and I really just wonder just how much energy they could save if the black-chinned could just be a little nicer to one another around the feeders and not continually try to chase each other off. Now here, this particular bird is feeding on a native plant, and I want a native plant. In this case, it's Texas betony, also known as scarlet hedge nettle. Seems like any of our native plants have to have at least 2 common names, if not more. And so I want to put in a plug for the use of native plants. Even if you just put out one native plant in a planter on your front porch, you really can start adding a lot. All of us continue to do that, a small part of the yard. It becomes a big deal in terms of attracting and maintaining our bird population. The more and more that you're able to convert what yard space you have to a diversity of native plants, it's a huge deal to our birds. This is a bird. The black-chinned hummingbirds will be around through like early to late September when they'll start to leave. And about mid-August, maybe a little later, we'll start to have ruby-throated hummingbirds and a little less common, but also rufous hummingbirds coming in as well. Now, when the black-chinned and the ruby-throated overlap, the males are easily identified, but the females are almost identical. And so they can create also an interesting ID dilemma as when you get those mix of hummingbirds together. And if you've got native plants, you're going to get some good looks out. The barred owl. It's, I would argue, this is probably the most common owl for our area. It's a year-round resident. It's a bulky, stocky owl with all brownish colors throughout, with just these very large, dark, striking eyes. It's generally found in wooded areas near water, near creeks and streams. I found it to be a fairly sociable bird. They're curious. If you're willing to, if you know they're out there, you hear them calling, you kind of go out and stand. They'll come around, and occasionally they'll fly right up to you and just like this one, just take a good look at you, and you just kind of wonder if what they're thinking. And it's probably something along the lines about, what are you doing in my backyard? And this bird was literally taken in our backyard here in Kendall County. And there's just an extra photo I'll put in. This is a barred owl that we saw at a Bear Audubon sponsored bird walk in Castroville State Park. So fairly personable birds. They allow a close approach, and you can get some good views. They can also be quite vocal. The standard call for a barred owl to me is like a white-winged dove calling through a megaphone with the "Who cooks for you?" "Who cooks for you?" call. And you get several of them. Several of them can go for an extended period of time back and forth across the woods, across the park, and can be quite entertaining. I've had them come up to the trees right next to our bedroom window about 4:30 in the morning and start to call, and it's like they're in there with you. So I find it quite entertaining, although I think my wife often could do without them. The eastern bluebird, quite rightly, is probably one of the most entertaining and interesting birds that we'll see on a bird survey, and one that's sought after to get a good view of. You see the bird house, the bluebird boxes that are in the photo have become a common presence throughout central Texas and throughout the eastern United States. The bluebirds have taken to using these bluebird boxes routinely, as have a number of other birds. Buick's wrens, astrodid flycatchers have taken advantage of this as well. But for the bluebirds, it's been important. The use of the bluebird boxes have been critical as a substitute to the cavity, the lack of cavity nest sites in trees that have disappeared because of development and habitat loss. And so the bluebird boxes have been an important item in terms of basically helping to reverse the decline in the bluebird population, stabilize it, and I think in some areas helping to get it to increase. Now, in this, and I mentioned that monitoring of the bluebird boxes has become an important volunteer activity within the birder community, and this includes keeping the boxes clear of some of invasive species such as the house sparrow that can be very aggressive. And by keeping those birds cleaned and out of the bluebird boxes, it gives the beautiful bluebirds a fighting chance. Now, as suggested in this photo, it's the female bluebird. It tends to both choose the box that's going to be the nesting site and will build the nest. And so my wife commented on this photo is that yet again it proved that it's the female that does the work. Although I'd highlight for you that the male in this particular case is offering a very stern lookout over the nest site. Now, when you get a successful clutch, you get fledglings, you get new bluebirds that have left the nest. Once an egg is laid, it takes about 3 weeks before you get a fledgling that's going to be able to come out and start to hunt on its own. But immature fledgling bluebirds are just gorgeous. I think they're in their own right one of the most striking birds that we have. You notice the white spots on the front, the white lined back, and the blue tinged wings, and it seems like the eye ring's even stronger on the immature birds than it is on the adults. And I'd also note, just in defense of our fathers, of the males, I believe that's a male bluebird, a bluebird that's about to feed the fledgling. And now, coming into the last photo I have is the scissor-tailed flycatcher, which again is a summer resident for us. They're going to be here about through early to mid-October. So they're another bird that can really liven up the sort of the summer doldrums of bird surveys here in our area. They're phenomenal acrobats. The poem that Lucy has in the book is titled "Sky Dancer," which is very appropriate for the scissor-tailed flycatcher. They are with the long tail long tails. They can perform just these tremendous acrobatic maneuvers and put the insects at a disadvantage on the defensive. Now, in addition to the acrobats, they're just beautiful, striking birds. So this pair, the sexes are similar in appearance. The upper one I would interpret as a male. It's got a slightly longer tail, but you've got the white heads and chest, and then the pink salmon flanks are a very striking bird. Again, summer resident, they're here over the summer. Let's enjoy them before they queue up and start to head south. So now come back to the cover page, Wingbeat Atlas, and would highlight for you again that the book is available at FlowerSong Press, which is the publisher. Also on Amazon.com, and use the Smile feature with Amazon and designate a contribution to Bear Audubon. Now, again, I hope you've gotten some enjoyment and found some interest in the images. This is just a portion. It's probably about half the images that are in the book. Is a chance to get a look at those. But a real treat is to hear Lucy have a live poetry reading. I'm just highlight on this slide are two that are scheduled in September, on September 15th at the Twig Bookshop in the Pearl Brewery, 5 to 7:30 p.m. And then in the Herf Amphitheater in Bernie on September 17th. Be outdoors at 7:30. And so with that, I'd invite Lucy maybe to make a comment on her poetry readings. Yep, I'll take that off.
Well, great job. Thank you, my partner. It's really been wonderful collaborating with you on this. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. And it's just been a joy to create this book together with you. And I think you did a great job showing the passion behind the images. I do think someone has asked about the relationship between the images and the poems. And I didn't count, but I think roughly half of them, I was inspired by your image to write a poem. And the other half, I would write a poem over something I saw here at the ranch, and you and Teresa would send me a bunch of images to pick from. And so I feel like the poem and the images are in conversation with each other. And for anyone who'd like to hear the poetry, I really hope you can come to one of the readings, or both. They'll be a little bit different. The one at Herf, I'll be reading with Naomi Shehab Nye, which is always a treat. So thank you so much for your time in doing this presentation.
Well, I would like to thank both of you for being here tonight. And I know everyone has just been grooving on it and can't wait to get your book and hear you read the poetry. Mine's going to be delivered tomorrow. I'm going to read it, and then I want to come hear you read it. And we'll all have a different favorite, I'm sure. I wanted to preface, there's some other questions about the camera work. Now, I know these photographer people, and they're going to ask questions about settings and all that kind of stuff. And Ken has graciously agreed that if it's something that he can answer quickly, he will handle it now. If not, he will furnish you his email, and you guys can talk about camera settings until the cows come home. So I wanted to throw out a couple of questions in the chat here, and let me just see where it says. And thank you, Lucy, for such a wonderful answer to that question about who inspired who. I can imagine it was just one hand clap. You can't have one hand clapping. It's got to be one of each of you. And it says here's on your ISO must vary with every photo. Would you comment on that?
Yes, it does. That's one where I control the settings in terms of again, speed and the aperture, but then the ISO is derived from those settings, and basically, simplistically, what I'm trying to do is get a setting that gets the lowest ISO possible. In other words, the densest image in terms of being able to, least grainy image for being able to blow up, show the photos, etc.
Yeah,
So
it's a
yes,
different-
I mean,
different-
yes, that's Wilt who's an excellent photographer in his own right. Is that yes, the ISO does vary with every photo.
Yes, there were a couple of questions about ISO, and then someone said, "Do you recommend a UV filter? Do you use a UV filter?"
I do not. I've tried one in the past, but my bias and it's different. Every photographer's got a little different approach. I don't put extra glass on the front end of it. I protect the front end with the lens hood again, and I don't use a UV filter or any other type of filter on the front of it.
Okay, and someone came in, I think, a little bit late. And they said, "What settings do you? What are your preferred settings with your lens?"
Well,
No,
again,
that's John Lewis. He's a photographer as well.
yeah, again, the base settings, I've got it on manual, so I control aperture, I control the shutter speed, and the base setting I have is full open on the aperture at 5.6, which is the largest it can go for the lens I have. And I use 1,000th of a second shutter speed to reduce vibration and to freeze birds in flight. I'll occasionally go less than that in low light with a stationary subject.
Right. RAW or JPEG?
I record in RAW. It's the Nikon version of RAW. And the reason being is that I'm able to, it takes an extra conversion step in order to use the photos. The ones I send around, what's displayed, I'm showing here are in JPEG, but I record in RAW. I process them in RAW because under low light conditions, difficult conditions, it preserves a bit of shading and color detail that you wouldn't get if you were just recording straight to JPEG.
Okay, any other questions from the group by verbal? Unmute. Great. Well, it was wonderful. And I wanted to point out that the third name on the cover of the book, there's Lucy and then there's Ken Butler. And the foreword was written by Victor Emanuel, who some of you probably have heard of. He is a fairly well-known international bird traveler. And he said this: "These descriptions connect the reader in new ways with the bird." I think you gave us a real good preview of that tonight, Ken. "And with all creatures, habitat is important. By often mentioning various plants, the bird's habitat is evoked. Give me those brush piles." Thank you for that. Ken, and the excellent images of each bird highlighted in a poem add a fresh layer of enjoyment. And Lucy's poems are brief and potent, then close with a moving, beautiful ending. So I think that is lovely, and coming from Victor, that means a lot. And can't tell you how much we've enjoyed this. The accolades are coming into the chat. And when we share the recording online, the recording does include the discussions, and I will send you a copy of the chat so that you can read the comments at your leisure. And if you want to respond in any more ways, you can do so. So with that, we'll say good night to everyone and happy birding, and stay cool and go out early. Enjoy. And you can see from this presentation that we can see birds through many eyes. They mean so many different things to so many people. And however somebody says, "What's a birder?" It's somebody who loves birds. Whether you like to identify them, photograph them, write poems about them, paint them, whatever. And so join us for other programs, and we welcome you wherever you are. So good night and happy birding. Bye-bye.
Right.